Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Micah. Today's video we're going to be talking about eyeshadow palettes again, but not just any old eyeshadow palette video. Oh no, we are going to be comparing eyeshadow palettes because someone actually kind of low-key requested this in the comments saying like, hey, could you compare Lorac Pro 3 to Naked 3 by Urban Decay, because I see a lot of people comparing them. And I think that that's something that, you know, content creators do a lot. Like we will say, oh, palette A can, you know, you can also try palette B if you like. And I just wanted to dedicate one video to a couple of pairings. I've got 10 of you here. Sometimes I just have 2 palettes, sometimes I have 3, sometimes I have even 4. To sort of tell you about the differences between them and how they might be similar and who they might be right for. So for instance, you can imagine that a palette is too big for you and you would like something more curated, or maybe you find one brand too expensive, or something may be very hard to get, or a palette may have been discontinued. So what are the alternatives? So I wouldn't necessarily say that these are dupes by any means, but they are other options that you can look into if you're looking for a similar vibe that this palette gives off. So that is what I wanted to do in today's video because we have a lot of things to talk about. Let's just get started. Oh, and by the way, I think I have reviews up for a lot of these, so I'll make sure to link as much as I can in the description box below, either to the blog if I have a dedicated review, or to a YouTube video where I've also like done a shorter, more like concise review, you could say. Yeah, let's just get cracking on these eyeshadow palettes. Let's just start with that pairing that I was initially asked to do, and that's these two. So Lorac Pro 3 and Urban Decay Naked 3. These are 2 of my all-time favorite eyeshadow palettes. These, together with the Naked 2 by Urban Decay, make up my top 3 all-time favorite eyeshadow palettes. And these you can still get. Newsflash, Lorac has made it to Europe. Yay! They are now available on Beauty Bay and also at Boozy Shop in the Netherlands. You can find them. So if you're in the Netherlands, then you can try that. I actually, I understand why people might want to compare these, but I feel they have very different color stories. So let me start with the Lorac Pro 3 because that's like my favorite. This is the Lorac Pro 3. And as you can see, this is very light. This is one of the very first neutral palettes on the market that I felt on my fair skin I could really use every single shade in the palette. Very often I felt there were always a few shades that didn't really work well with my complexion. But with this, I was like, yes, thank you. For a fair girl like me, everything in here works. But I also know that a lot of people didn't like the palette because it is so light, and they felt it looked very ashy on them. Another thing that's really great about this palette is that it is very neutral leaning. It has a bit of warmth in some of the shades, but it also has a few like cooler tones, and it also does that in the shimmers. So I feel that you can very easily mix and match everything that is in here. And let's just go on to the Naked 3 then, because in the Naked 3, we get far more cool tones, I feel. So I'm pretty sure we all know what the Naked 3 looks like. This is very pink, and then it goes more like taupey. Let me figure out the logistics here. But I'm not sure if you put these 2 palettes together, I feel they are nothing like it because the warmth that you get in a shade like Terracotta is just not present in the Naked 3. I think the only shade that the Lorac has that is also like roughly in the Naked 3 is Rose Bronze. Dark Mocha isn't even in here because it's too brown toned. So Rose Bronze is quite similar actually to something like Liar and Mugshot. Like if you would combine these 2, you kind of get this, but I feel that this is lighter. And everything else I feel is just not in there because this is not very pinky. This is just a lot more pink, a lot more like taupey. And I think if you can actually see them like this side by side, that you can really see the difference here. These these are some of my favorite crease shades on the market for sure. Clay, Terracotta, and Dark Brown. And I feel that this just pulls more like brownish neutral, whereas this is more pinky, taupey, cool toned, if that makes sense. Let's just talk about something colorful as well, because also in the colorful end of the spectrum, we get palettes that do similar things. And I really like blues and greens, and I have 2 blue-green palettes in my collection. My favorite of the 2 is the Beauté Oceanic. That's also why I put it in my most recent giveaway. This is what the palette looks like. The reason why I like this so much is because it really has a lot of versatility that I feel the other one lacks, even though it has more shades. So I find that in here you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shimmers, and then you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mattes. Yes, because it's 15 shades. So 6 shimmers, 9 mattes, and I really appreciate that. The shimmers in here are very intense, and I also feel that the shimmers you get really complement the mattes very well. I also really like how you get some like really like poppy bright shades, like these two over here, but you also get a great teal. You get lots of depth in here, like a really good true navy shade, and also this forest green, and then you get a murky green, like more like a cocky olive leaning shade. So I really appreciate the shade selection that's in here. And in the Certifeye Affinity 2, we also have a really lovely range of blue greens, but I feel that it's just a little less versatile than the Ace Beauté. One of the reasons is that for an 18 pan palette, you only get 5 shimmers. You get this one, you get this one, you get this one, you get this one, and you get that one. That's not a whole lot. And I prefer shimmers over mattes, so that's why I like this just a little bit. It's a bit more balanced for me. I do have to say that this shimmer and also this shimmer are super unique. They are like duochromes. They have this kind of flip to it. This as well, but it's more like a whitish blue shade. Not my favorite. And these two are just more like satins. They aren't super vibrant, very punchy shimmers, you could say. So for me, I would have liked more shimmers in here. This has a really nice color story overall. It does have some depth, but I feel that these don't translate as dark on the eye, which is why, so if I put them side by side for you, then it may seem like they both have the same sort of versatility to them. But for me, I just feel that this one, the Certifeye one, just has more mid-tones to it. So I feel they can complement each other very well. So could this have gone with the Lorac Pro 3 and the Naked 3? I think so, but we need to discuss mauve tones because mauves are everywhere at the moment. I feel like everybody's doing something mauvey, and I've got 4 options for you here because mauves, they are just one of my favorite things to wear, and that's why I really wanted to also give you the lowdown on these. I have the Melt Seasons Party Stack here. I have the Catrice, what's this called? Pro Next Gen Nudes. I have Colourpop Making Mauves, and I have the Colourpop Flutterby. And I want to start with these Colourpop ones because I think you definitely don't need both of these. If you're looking into placing yourself a Colourpop order and you were umming and ahhing between these two, I hope this video can be helpful to make up your mind. So let's talk Flutterby first. So the Flutterby is this one. It's got 1 press glitter, so that could already sway you. I'm very well aware, but it does really have a cooler undertone. It has a nice range of depth here to really give a little bit more dimension to the palette as well. I really like these 2 shimmers. Those are really pretty, and you also just really get a couple of really lovely like creasy shades here. Even though this is a matte with glitter, but I use this as a crease shade slash transition. Love it. And this shimmer right here is really unique because it has almost like a plummy undertone to it, but it's still a mauve. It's really stunning on the lower lash line or as liner. And then you just get some really good like blend shades and like transitions. That's all there, and this just makes for a really great inner corner highlight. So for me, this is a really great mauve tone palette. But then a bit later, Colourpop released this, and this is the Making Mauves. And I'm not sure if you can see this straight from the bat, but this is a bit more warm toned. So if I put them side by side, Flutterby is more cool tone slash neutral leaning, and it's also a lot lighter, whereas this is a little bit more deep, like a bit deeper in tone. It's got 3 shimmers and 6 mattes in a 9 pan, so that's great. And I feel that the Flutterby, because it has this really intense cool tone brown, I feel it's just a little bit more versatile because I feel that this, while it's deep, I don't always find it deep enough to really get the dimension that I'd like. Again, it has stunning crease shades over here. It's got a good blend shade. It's got a good transition. It's got 3 stunning shimmers. But I just feel that this, if this had just a little bit more depth to it, it would have been more perfect for me. So if I were to choose between these 2, I would go for the Flutterby, even though I keep the Making Mauves around for that super shock that's in here. However, If you can't get Colourpop, but you can get Catrice, you can get something very similar in its vibes from Catrice. So for those of you in the States, I think Colourpop is easier to access. For me in Europe, Catrice is easier to get. So this is just an option like, hey, if you can't get these ones, maybe look into this. This is their Pro Next Gen Nudes palette, as I mentioned, and it's got lovely mauvey sort of Huda Beauty new nude inspired kind of tones. And this is such a great palette. It's great quality. It's got a really nice, deeper, cool tone matte. So I feel that this is a great alternative, especially for the flutter by, but then it also has this like more warmer tone brown and like this deeper rosy matte shade as well. And this shimmer is quite similar actually to something that you might find in the Making Mauve. So if you're in Europe and those two Colourpop palettes are something you're eyeing up, try this one because I feel it's a good combination of the two. Now, I don't have the palette because I already own the stack, so I didn't shell out like 50 euros for the Melt She's in Parties palette, but all 4 of these shades are in the palette, so if you can't get the stack anymore, but you are eyeing up the palette, then I do think the Melt She's in Parties is a great one if you are looking into mauves and you're willing to spend a little bit more money. I definitely think that from a mauve tone perspective, it has more depth to it. So especially if you have a much deeper skin tone, then these palettes may be just too light for you. And then the She's in Parties can actually give you a mauve toned look, but for a much deeper perspective, complexion, I should say. So that I think is good to know. And also in the She's in Parties, I think in the palette you do get some more shimmers now, which is great. But She's in Parties, the shimmer, I mean, this is the reason why I bought the stack, right? It's got a really nice like duochrome to it. And I also feel that it's very warm toned. So it's a more warm toned leaning, and then the darkest shade in that is going to be this like plum. This shade, hold on. But do you see what I mean? Like if something, ooh, they're getting stuck together. If something this dark would have been in here, I think I would have liked it a lot better. Let's talk grungy greens, because that's another option we have, of course. So I want to start with the palette that got everybody's, like this just got the train started, right? The Melt Gemini. I bought the Melt Gemini because I love my Muerte so much. And in here, what you get is you get these like warm tone browns. You only get 2 shimmers. Like, who am I? Why do I love this palette so much? It's because it's just really, it's a really good color story. And then you get a black and you get these murky greens with this like more like almost yellow. Like it's almost a yellow, but it has a bit of green to it. It's like, I know I describe colors with the most appealing shade names, but this is more like a vomit shade. Don't come for me. It looks lovely in your crease, okay? I just did a look with this in my most recent Get Ready With Me, so I can link that in the, I think this way. I can link it in the eye above, and that is just, this is just such a great palette, and I really like how all of these colors just play together. The power of this palette lies in the combination of the greens with the browns. You can do an all green look, for sure. You can do an all brown look, for sure, but I really like just really going back and forth, and I think in that Get Ready With Me, I used every single shade save for one. So yeah, this palette is just absolutely gorgeous, but there are more affordable options on the market right now that people say are similar or that I think are similar. So what people say is similar is this one, the Kaleidos Futurism 1 Sci-Fi Green. I don't really think it's a good dupe for the Melt one, and I'll show you the palette first and let you know why. I feel that these shimmers are far more golden toned than the Melt one. So if I put them together like this, do you see that, especially with the greens more this way, do you see how those greens in the Melt are just really stunning greens, whereas these are very yellow toned? These are like, this could still be a green, but it's very gold toned leaning. It's more like a gold with a green undertone, whereas the Melt Gemini truly has greens. So while you do get some really nice like green toned mattes in here and a good black, and you also get this warm toned almost orangey shade that you could find in the Melt Gemini, in the shimmer range, I don't think this really pulls off the same kind of vibe that the Melt Gemini does. It just doesn't. What I would recommend you look into, if you're looking for a more affordable option, is the Juvia's Place, the No Matte palette. It only has 9 pans, and for me, again, you don't get that green tone shimmer. For me, that's where the Melt really is unique, but I feel that this palette, again, it only has 2 true shimmers. You get those warm tones, like almost like yellow toned leaning browns. You get this like mustardy kind of shades. You get a very sort of, I've called this baby poop brown in the past. So where Mel Gemini has like a vomit shade, this has a poop shade, really, it does. But I feel just how this comes together, I feel, even though it's not a straight up dupe shade for shade, I feel that in terms of what I get from it, the feel and the vibe is closer to the Mel Gemini than this one, than the Kaleidos one, I should say. Now, 2 palettes that I have recently come to realize that are actually quite comparable are a palette that has been discontinued and a palette you can still get. And that is these 2. Ooh, super shiny. So this is the Urban Decay Vice 3 and the Urban Decay Born to Run. And what Urban Decay has been accused of a little bit recently is that they are redoing things that they discontinued in the past. And that's certainly the case with this one, I feel. So this is what the Vice 3 looks like. And this is the Vice 3 was the first Vice palette that really had some sort of color story and a little bit more like actual like logic behind it. Like the first 2 were just like a bunch of shades and you were like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? But here you get these like more neutral leaning mattes, and then you get a like blue-green row, you get this like rusty purpley shades, you get some berries, and then you get these cool tones here. Now, the first difference that I can really tell you about these 2 is that this palette is more cool tone leaning. So what they've done for the Born to Run, I feel, is taken this color story and brought it more into like 2000, when did this come out? 2019, 2020, something like that. But do you see how the Born to Run just has a lot of similar shades in it? It's just far more warm tones. So the berries in the, something like this plummy shade is in the Vice 3. Something like these 2 berry shades is in the Vice 3. Something like these like greens and blues is in the Vice 3. Something like this drift shade is in the Vice 3. The only thing it really doesn't have is this like orange, like these really like warmer tones, but it has like 4 mattes that can really tie the palette together. So for me, these are just very comparable, but this is more cool tone leaning, which is what I prefer, because I could not figure it out. Why did I not love my Born to Run more like everybody else has? Because a lot of people have been saying what great quality this is, and a lot of people have been buying it and recommending it. I just didn't feel it, and I was like, but I already own the color story. It's the Vice 3, but more warm toned. Then again, a palette that has been discontinued and an alternative for it is the Juvia's Place, the Tribe. So the Tribe was just recently discontinued. It has a 9-pan color story with greens and like a very bright, like almost neon-y, limey shade. And then these like, this is more of like a green to me, and then this is more of like a teal. It's just got a little bit of blue to it. It's a very sort of green toned teal, you could say. These 2 shimmers have a green flip to them. And then you get these oranges, and again, a baby poop kind of greenish, brownish shade. It is different than the one, the Nomad. The Nomad has much more yellow to it because there's also far more yellow tones in that palette. I think that if you mix browns with a bit of orange and green, that's when you get this kind of shade. A palette that has a very similar color story that you can still get is the OPV Beauty Tropical Dreams palette. So if you missed out on the Tribe, which is one of my favorite Juvia's Place palettes, like for real, like Juvia's Place, what are you doing to us? But let me put these side by side for you. Ta-da! It's got the oranges, it's got some more like vibrant blues, but this Fiji shade is very similar to the very bright shade in the Juvia's Place. You get this really nice like grassy green that the Juvia's Place has. You get a more like blue toned kind of tealy shade. You get this green, you get another one of those, and then it just has some blues and turquoises that the Juvia's Place doesn't have. This palette retails for about 25 pounds or something like that. It's quite affordable. It doesn't have the best smell to it, but it has really, really great quality. So if you missed out on the Tribe, check out this one, because you just get a few more shades and then you still can do the same kind of looks. So let's talk about some neutral stuff again, or neutral, well, are berries neutrals? They don't have to be, I guess. But let's just say that a palette that got a lot of hype was the ABH Modern Renaissance, right? We all know that. But a lot of people really liked this side of the palette and didn't really go into this side. But for me, my makeup taste, I just really love the berries and the pink. That is what really draws me into this palette. And then like some like Balm Fresco and that Antique Bronze and Cypress Umber. Like these are my shades. Like this second, oh, it's so yummy. It's one of my favorite fall looks to do, and I actually plan on using this palette in my next Get Ready With Me by the end of this month, so I can show you the look that I always do with my Modern Renaissance. I tweak it every now and again, but you know, that is just, for me, this palette lives, like I just live for the berries in this palette. And because I like those berries so much, but you really only get like 2 reddish toned shades in the pink, I was like, can we get more? Can we get more berries into the system? So that's why I got, well, let's just start with this first, because I feel that if you just like the berries in the Modern Renaissance, you definitely don't have to buy the entire palette, because Dose of Colors, of course, even though they've upped the price point on these little palettes, is doing the blushing berries. And this is what these two look like together. As you can see, it has this like peachy shade that could be one of the neutrals in the Modern Renaissance, but then you get 3 really lovely berry shades and you get a black. So for me, I sort of, in the fall time, I go between these two palettes for like a really quick and easy berry tone look. The blushing berries, I really like topping it off with like a Colourpop Super Shock or another creamy or glittery shadow that I have. Whereas the Modern Renaissance, because I have so many other shades and you do get some good shimmers in here, I feel I can just use the palette and it's a look. But yeah, if you're looking for berry shades and you just want it to be those berries, Dose of Colors. But what if you can't get enough of berries? Then you need to try this. The Lime Crime Venus XL. This is, I call this the Modern Renaissance on steroids, and even though I don't think it has the reddish undertone of something like Red Ochre, even though this shade here, Burned Gold, is actually quite similar to that, I think. So if I put these side by side, you can see that this Venus XL definitely has the shades that the Modern Renaissance has. Here you have Triumph, which is pretty similar to Love Letter, it looks like. Something like Venetian Red, I think, isn't necessarily in here. So it doesn't pull very red. It's more pink tone leaning, I'd say. But this is absolutely stunning. So this is a full berry on look. Like if you want to go full on berry, this is your palette. If you just want some neutrals in there, then the Modern Renaissance is perhaps still perfect. But yeah. Here I also again want to make a comparison between a more high-end and a more affordable version. And the more affordable version is getting more difficult to find. I'm talking about these two. The Urban Decay Naked Honey and the Zoeva Blanc Fusion. These are both yellow tone palettes. And I'll talk about the Zoeva first because this palette has been around for longer. And you can only still buy this if you buy it as a set with 2 of the other chocolate palettes. That is also the set I got, but I remember this being for sale as a single palette for a while too. It's just not available like that anymore, and it seems like Juvia's Place, it seems like Zoeva is discontinuing stuff as well. So, but what I've always really liked about this palette is that it has a full row of mattes and a full row of shimmers, and these mattes are more cool toned leaning. So this, and then it has this really vibrant yellow, and also this shade is a bit more yellow toned, a very strong yellow tone gold, which is usually not my favorite. And then this white also has this like golden flip to it. That's more like a duochrome. And that's one thing I've always really appreciated about this palette, and it's one of my favorites from Zoeva. But then last year, of course, Urban Decay came out with the Naked Honey. And a lot of people like this palette because it has these like more ambery kind of shades. So the way I feel these two palettes compare, oh, they match my shirt. Isn't that lovely? The way I feel these compare is because of those yellow tones. However, the Naked Honey is far more warm tone leaning, and this is more cool tone fair leaning as well. Like this goes deeper, even though it's not super deep, which is why I loved it. Like I loved that just so much about it, that it wasn't too deep. Again, a neutral palette I can use all the shades in, so I loved it. Of course, I do have to say with this one, if you cover up the 2 yellows in the middle, it's just a lot of mustard browns. I also don't understand why this is called a Naked Honey, because it's more like the Naked Mustard to me. But oh well, I'm game. It's got enough mattes, enough shimmers, really lovely. I just feel that if you have a fair skin tone, or if you're more cool toned, neutral toned leaning, and this is a bit too warm for you, if it looks a bit weird, because yellow can make you look a little sickly, you know, then this is a really, really good alternative. I hope you can still get it. I wanted to also again include some more colorful stuff. So again, here we have two indie brands actually. So I have some rainbow palettes, and I do think that when it comes to rainbow palettes, you really don't need a ton, because a rainbow palette is a rainbow palette in the end. A lot of them have all matte color stories, so that's the two that I've selected here. I do have a few other more like rainbow color stories, but those have shimmers in. And the only two that I really have that are fully matte are the Certifeye Tropical Wonders and the Slush 2 by September Rose Cosmetics. And these are lovely, lovely palettes. My favorite of the two till this day is this one, the Certified Tropical Wonders, mainly because it's very curated, and it does give you all the shades that you could possibly need. I only wish that Toucan would be a little bit more like a true orange. I feel it's very yellow toned, but because of that, it is a bit more neutral leaning, and it can sort of tone down looks if you feel that they are a bit too bright. You do get some neutrals, a white, a black, and a gray in here as well, which is lovely. And I just feel like this red is like a true red, and you get a really nice, like, very nice bright blue, but then also like a lighter blue. So I feel that they've, for how many shades you get in here, it's just really nice and curated, and I really like the formula. But I've said this many times before, the Slush 2 by September Rose is definitely giving it a run for its money. And that's because it just has this lovely gradient, which the Slush 1 also has. And I just really appreciate how you go from like lighter to darker purple, lighter to darker blue. You get a white, you get a yellow, and then it goes into greens. You get a bunch of oranges, like these are all different tones of orange, and you get two pinks, and it leads into this like deeper red. So where I feel that this color story is just more of like a true primary color palette, you could say, I feel that this is more like those mid-tones, like one shade off kind of rainbow palette for like sunset looks. Like that's what I love my Slush 1 for actually, but that has shimmer in. And that also has more like pastel and neons. And this is also more primary color leaning. But I feel that this one is just a little bit more perfect. Do you see that they don't have the same undertones to the shades? And then last but not least, this was like the one thing that when I was filming my Shop My Stash earlier in the week, I was like, huh, these could be dupes. So I just wanted to film, like put them in here. This is brand new from Catrice. This is the Vintage Soul, and this is the Lorac Pro 4. I only just recently tried these. Like these are brand new to me. I bought this over the summer. This has been out for like 2 weeks now. It's like, it's super duper brand new. So I wanted to make sure to put something like that into. The Lorac Pro 4 is not one that a lot of people talk about, because by the time the Lorac released this, the Lorac had really fallen off of everyone's radar, and I kind of bought this to complete the set. I'm not gonna lie, that's the only reason I actually bought it. The reason why I was still intrigued is because it has rosier tones. Like again, a good alternative to something like Naked 3 if that is too light for you, because I feel that this does go deeper, and it's also more warm toned leaning, like warm toned rosy, really nice. But it does have some cooler tones, something like in here, like a bit more taupey here on this end. And I just really liked how everything combined in this palette. It was really lovely. It's not too light. But then Catrice came out with this, and I was filming my Shop My Stash, and I had just talked about these two palettes, and I was like, aren't they like kind of similar? Like you also get this like reddish tone shade and like a plum in the Catrice one. You do get more gray tones though. So I feel the Catrice one is more cool tone leaning and more perfect for like my super fair skin. That is more cool in its undertone. But the Lorac Pro 3 is just a really good solid rosy tone palette that's a bit deeper, but it's not like Anastasia soft glam deep. It's not too spicy. It's great, perfect. It's still perfect for every day. And I feel the same way about the Catrice one. So I'm not sure if Catrice took a note from Lorac's book. I'm not entirely sure. But this may be a little bit harder to get if you're not in Europe right now, because this is just being released here. So there you have it. Those were 10 pairings that I wanted to discuss with you. I hope it was useful for you, that some of these pairings you were interested in. And then, yeah, I will be back with a new video soon. So if you could thumbs this one up, that would help me out. If you could subscribe to my channel, that will also help me out. And then I hope to see you in my next video. Bye-bye.